Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the thrilling, kind of spooky legend of the world's most famous archaeological mystery, the Curse of King Tut. And more importantly, we're going to look at the brilliant science that finally solves it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Death shall come on swift wings to whoever disturbs the peace of the pharaoh. That is the chilling ancient warning that supposedly sat right outside the boy king's tomb. It's a phrase that sparked a massive global panic and kicked off a string of truly gruesome, unexplained events.
Picture this. It's April 1923. Inside Cairo's Continental Hotel, Lord Carnarvon, he was the super-wealthy British sponsor of the expedition, is thrashing in bed with a severe fever. At exactly 1:55 a.m., he takes his final breath. But here is where it gets incredibly eerie. At that exact same moment, the entire city of Cairo suffered a total blackout. And thousands of miles away in England, Carnarvon's pet dog, Susie, suddenly began to howl and just hours later dropped dead. No way, right?
And honestly, that was literally just the beginning. Over the next 6 years, a staggering 22 deaths were linked to this tomb. I'm talking about sudden, terrifying demises here. A radiologist who x-rayed the mummy suddenly passed away. Even a 78-year-old father of one of the crew members inexplicably leaped to his death from a 7th-floor window in London. The whole world was watching this in absolute horror.
But to really grasp how this whole thing blew up, we kind of have to rewind back to November 1922 in the Valley of the Kings. Enter Howard Carter. He was the ultimate underdog archaeologist, plagued by childhood illness. Actually, scratch that, he wasn't formally educated at all. He basically just had a paintbrush and a dream. His sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, had already spent 15 years and £500,000 with absolutely nothing to show for it. This was Carter's absolute last, desperately funded chance before the money was cut off forever.
So let's see how this all builds up. The sequence of events that followed was breathless, rapid fire. On November 4th, they find a hidden stairway cut into the rock. They dig furiously. By November 24th, a sealed door is revealed, clearly bearing the name Tutankhamun. And then, on November 26th, the tomb is finally opened, the greatest archaeological discovery in human history happening in a matter of days. Just imagine that exact moment. Carter chisels a tiny hole in the door. Warm air escapes. He inserts a flickering candle into 3,000 years of pure darkness. Lord Carnarvon, standing anxiously right behind him, asks, "Can you see anything?" And Carter, completely awestruck, breathes back, "Wonderful, wonderful."
And what he actually saw in there? Mind-blowing. We're talking about 5,398 objects, sitting perfectly untouched for 3 millennia. That includes a 10-kilo solid gold death mask, solid gold coffins, and even a dagger forged from the iron of a fallen meteorite. The sheer scale of the treasure was way beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
But almost immediately, things take a really weird turn. A chilling local omen starts spreading like wildfire across Egypt. See, Carter kept a lucky golden canary in a cage at his house. Well, one day a worker heard a scream, rushed over and found a cobra, which is the ultimate ancient symbol of Egyptian royalty, inside the cage, eating Carter's canary. The locals were terrified. To them, the dead king's spirit was already awake and seeking brutal revenge.
Then the media got a hold of it, and man, the frenzy was just unstoppable. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who literally created Sherlock Holmes, publicly blamed an evil elemental for Lord Carnarvon's illness. Global newspapers drove massive hysteria. Novelist Marie Corelli even published a public warning just 12 days before Carnarvon died. And the irony of it all, Arthur Weigall, the special correspondent who heavily promoted the whole cursed myth to begin with, died of a fever, becoming victim number 21. He was swallowed by the very myth he helped create.
Now, what's really interesting about this is what happened at the absolute peak of the terror in 1926. Dr. Douglas Derry performed an autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy, and he found a mysterious circular spot perfectly preserved on the pharaoh's left cheek. Astoundingly, it exactly matched the location of the fatal mosquito bite that killed Lord Carnarvon. I mean, it looked like a seemingly impossible physical connection between a 3,000-year-old mummy and its first victim.
Section 2. The Real Tutankhamun. Peeling back the mask.
So forget the powerful, terrifying God King you usually see in the movies. We need to look past the myth, at the historically accurate and frankly pretty tragic reality of a boy pharaoh born in 1329 BC during a time of absolute religious chaos. The reality of this boy king was far from glamorous. Decades of extreme royal inbreeding meant Tutankhamun suffered terribly. He had a severe club foot, making it impossible to walk unassisted. He was afflicted with collarbone disease, which causes excruciating pain, and modern science even found evidence of malaria in his DNA. He didn't die from a curse. He died from a devastating combination of these severe ailments. That is exactly why his tomb contained 130 walking sticks. In fact, he was considered so unimportant at the time that his successors deliberately erased his name from history entirely.
Section 3. Science debunks the myth. Systematically dismantling the curse. Okay, here's the really satisfying mask pull moment. It is time we logically and scientifically tear down every single piece of the media's sensationalized mystery. Let's start with the foundational lie. That terrifying inscription, "Death shall come on swift wings," never actually existed. It was entirely fabricated. Decades later, a security officer confessed that when an eager journalist asked about a curse during the excavation, the crew didn't explicitly deny it. They just offered a silent smile. The world's most famous myth started entirely from a reporter's imagination and an excavation team's quiet amusement.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real statistical truth, which is even more revealing. A 2002 study published in the British Medical Journal tracked everyone involved. They found that out of 44 Westerners present in Egypt, the 25 people who actually went physically inside the tomb had an average age of death of 73 years, and the 19 people who stayed outside, also exactly 73 years. Statistically, the curse had absolutely zero impact on mortality. In fact, for that era, 73 was quite a long life.
But wait, what about the dog, right? The myth says Susie the dog died at the exact same moment as Lord Carnarvon. The reality? Simple geography. Carnarvon died at 1:55 a.m. Cairo time. Susie died at 4 a.m. in England. Because of international time zones, the dog actually died hours later. So it wasn't supernatural timing at all, it was just the rotation of the Earth.
In that magical, perfectly targeted blackout in Cairo, right when Carnarvon took his last breath, again, totally mundane. In 1920s Egypt, the electrical infrastructure was incredibly unreliable. Constant, routine power cuts were an everyday occurrence. It was nothing more than a coincidence.
Finally, let's talk about those supernatural diseases. We really have to remember the medical context of the era. Back in 1923, before the discovery of penicillin, a simple infected mosquito bite, like the one Carnarvon got, which he then accidentally sliced open while shaving, was an absolute death sentence. Furthermore, tests later showed the tombs did contain a common, curable fungus called Aspergillus niger, which can cause respiratory inflammation. Today, basic antibiotics would clear it right up.
If you want the ultimate test of the curse, well, just look at the survivors. The primary targets, the very first people to physically enter the tomb, touch the artifacts, and unwrap the mummy, lived incredibly long, completely normal lives. Lady Evelyn, Carnarvon's daughter, was one of the first inside. She lived to be 78. Dr. Douglas Derry, who literally unwrapped and examined the mummy, lived to 87. And Howard Carter himself, the man who breached the tomb, lived to 64, passing away 16 years after the discovery.
So the crucial point is exactly how Carter handled all this relentless hysteria. For the next 16 years, whenever panicked reporters would constantly hound him, asking about his impending, gruesome doom, Carter consistently gave the same sassy, perfectly grounded response, "I am still alive."
And that really brings us full circle to this beautiful piece of ancient Egyptian philosophy. They believed that you only truly die when your name is forgotten. Remember, Tutankhamun's successors deliberately tried to erase him. He was completely forgotten for 3,000 years. So I leave you with this to consider. Did Howard Carter actually unleash a curse? Or did his magnificent discovery defeat the real curse of obscurity, granting this tragic boy king true immortality? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it illuminated the fascinating truth behind the tomb.